Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Aura Vasquez, and I'm so honored today to be hosting a panel with a group of beautiful women to talk about how we can best show up as allies for Black lives and for the movement of Black Lives Matter and what's currently happening in our country and our nation. A lot of you have been asking me how you can best support in this moment our African American Black community and people of color in general. And in a moment where we have experienced a pandemic, we just came out of primary elections in the United States, and now we have seen in national television the death of George Floyd in the hands or knee of a police officer that has really awakened in a lot of us the question of why and when enough is enough. So I wanted to bring a group of incredible women to speak about this very issue, and to share with us a little bit of wisdom, and just to have an open conversation about how we can best show up as allies in this moment. And this conversation might be uncomfortable for some of you. This conversation might not be new, or maybe very new. This might be the first time that you come across maybe something of this magnitude. But for a lot of people all around the world and all around the country, especially for Black people, they have been enduring segregation and discrimination for so long. And I think right now we wanted to open a space so that we can all learn and maybe have a candid and open conversation about how we can best be ourselves. How can we also be present in this moment, and how we can also show up and use our voice. So I want to introduce our incredible group of women.
Well,
let me message.
We're having technical difficulties.
We'll have to deal with those.
Yes, our gracious host has been muted or frozen for a little bit, but I want to, if we're still live, I would like to say thank you to the women who are here, and I want us to be thinking and holding in our hearts and in our prayers the women who have always been on the front line. We birth our children, always hoping for the best, and we carry them in our arms anytime they scrape their knees or their feelings get offended or things don't play out the way that they're supposed to be or expected. Through all of these times, they always come to us, and we always give them a reassuring hug. We welcome their friends when they come over, and there's so much that we do as women. But one of the things that is necessary in these times is standing up for everyone's children. Everyone's children. When someone calls us mom, when they're calling out to mom, we respond. And it doesn't matter whose child is saying mom. We respond equally with concern and with love. And we do the best that we can to make sure that everything comes out right. But today, things aren't right anymore. Things aren't coming out the way that they're supposed to play out. The fact that law enforcement in our country is not just detaining and transporting people to jail, but that they're acting like judge and jury, and that they're executing, and that they're applying their own force and brutality against people, not criminals. I think that's part of the problem is everybody thinks that if law enforcement is looking at you, that you're a criminal, that if you've been in jail, that you're a criminal. So we've got to stop looking at people who have been targeted, whether it's through a phone call, whether through dispatch, whatever it is. When the police show up, um, we're assumed to be guilty if we're people of color, and we don't get to explain the situation. But if we have white privilege, then we're given they're treated different. So I'm here because I want people who have that privilege to understand that it's time for them to use that privilege and not to, wish for their better days or pray for better days. I want them to go out and make and create better days and not to stand on the sidelines, but to stand together because we need to stand together now. So thank you. Our guest, our host, who's provided this space for us is back. So welcome, Aura.
Thank you, Cheryl, and thank you, ladies, for holding space for me for just a moment. That was a moment of technology. Welcome. But, but I was introducing ourselves, and I wanted Cheryl to ask you to please start this space as we always do. Also, for those of you that maybe don't have never participated on an action, the way that we start our actions is by acknowledging, our elders and the stolen land and the indigenous land that we're sitting on. So I'm wondering, Cheryl, if you could please start us off with blessing this moment and blessing this space that we're creating to have a conversation about how to best support our Black allies.
Okay. Can I ask all the viewers and all the women to please extend your hands out like this? Thank you. And I would like you to close your eyes for just a few seconds while I call our Creator, our ancestors. Grandfather, we're so thankful that you brought all the sisters together and all the mothers and the grandfathers in this sacred space where the words that we say are going to touch one another's heart and are going to lift each other's hands to grab those who are reaching out for help right now, that we be prepared to reach out even further to grab them, because right now everybody needs a hand to protect them. When we were at Standing Rock, we stood like this because we were saying we were unarmed. When we protest, we're on the street and peaceful protesters. We put our hands up. We put our minds together. We gather the strength and the love from our hearts. And we remember why we're here. We're here for the future. Creator, thank you. Bless us. Hold all of these hands, that these hands be united in prayer and in peace and with wisdom. And let us use this technology to the best of our ability to protect all those on the front line, to stop the police brutality, to rein in the brutality, to open our hearts for a new way to live as humans amongst each other and recognize each other as a solution, because we are the solution. Oh, that's what I pray for. And remember all of our ancestors who have fought bravely throughout our history in America for freedom. These lands are indigenous lands that we occupy, and I honor all of those who have given their life to protect our freedoms. And it's for those freedoms that we're still fighting today. So thank you. I want everyone to put their hands together, because this is how we are going to be. We're going to be strong like this for one another, for whoever needs us. That's my prayer, that we're strong like this for whoever needs us, wherever we're at, wherever our front line is. Creator, help us. Help us. Never let go of one another. Never let go. That's my prayer, is that we never let go. Never. Oh. Thank you, sisters. To breathe in. We're free to breathe. We're free to breathe. And I think about that every time I take a breath. We're free to breathe. And that's what I want for my brothers and sisters out there. I want them to be free to breathe and not to have the life choked out of them just because of the color that they are.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. I want to first instance deal with not here, and I wanted her to share a little bit about what's happening in the country and why maybe for some of you might be you see in the news that is about looting and it's about rioting. But I want us to come back to the root cause of this issue, which is that for far too long, certain people in our community, African Americans, Black people, have been suffering from injustices, have been suffering from profiling, have been suffering from police brutality. And it has come to a moment in history where we were going through a pandemic, where we see millions of people out of work without certainty to even return to work, where we have a dilapidated healthcare that has made us stay, home and be away from the people that we love and for the everyday life, but it's also giving us an opportunity to step up and to evolve and to change. And earlier, I was talking to a neighbor of mine, and he just had a baby, and he reminded me that birth is pretty difficult. And I am not a mother. I have not given birth. But I mean, we all know that birth, when we think about birth, is birthing a human is hard. So now imagine that now we are birthing a new way of living, a new way of relating, a new way where we can have justice and where people are accountable, not just some people, but all of us. So I just wanted to ground the conversation about that and open the discussion a little bit. And before we go there, if you can also share with you how you got to this work, who you are, and we can have like a candid conversation. And I'm also asking folks that are watching right now, if you're watching on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, even on Twitch, please post your questions and your comments and how you're feeling. We also want to hear from you. Just because we are on this side of the computer doesn't mean that we cannot feel your energy. We can also feel it. So let us know and post in the comments questions that you might have or comments that you might have for any of us. So maybe if we can start with you, Cheryl, maybe you sharing a little bit about who you are and how you came to this work and what are your reflections around what's going on currently in the nation.
I'm a very blessed person, and I always remind myself to try to be a blessing to other people. With my words, with my energy, I try really hard to focus on the instant of wherever I'm at. When I was at Standing Rock, I focused on the people there who were having difficulty because of the trauma that they were experiencing on the front line, and the trauma that they were having at expressing their anger. Their because anger doesn't have a release button where you just touch the button and then anger dissipates. You have to literally work through that anger. You have to understand why you're angry. Why are you so angry? And it's because of all the injustice. People recognize injustice, and whenever let's say well, for us, we really honor water. So we went to the water as soon as we heard the call. But for other people, they came when they saw that dogs were being unleashed and pushed to attack us. They came when they saw that the pipeline was going to be put a mile up from a reservation, a community that didn't have the resources to stop the pipeline and move it somewhere else. They came because they saw the injustice. So my work there was literally to be of service to the people there. And nonviolent direct action was a tactic that we utilized every single day, sometimes two, three, four times a day. We were using nonviolent direct action. And what I saw there was a community being built of people. Of people from all across America and the globe who wanted justice and who knew that we had the legal right to be there and the legal right to stop that pipeline. Well, then the inequality, when the inequality um, was laid bare, when it was really apparent that it didn't matter if we were right. What mattered was that the people who had the money that were backing the pipeline get what they want. Then people were really traumatized about that, because it's like everything that you believe in disappears. And then you don't have this foundation that you were raised in here in America. So it was eye opening for everybody to have to create a new foundation, a spiritual foundation, a foundation that says, I am going to connect with the earth because she provides with me, instead of connecting to the system. So there was this big rejection of the system that I saw happen that I'm glad to be a part of. I don't want to be part of the system that we're living in right now. I want to be part of the new system that's being created by women and by the conversations that's being had about being human to each other and recognizing each other as a solution. Because I see people, when I see them as the energy that we need. We're not in an energy crisis, because all of the energy that we have is you. You have the energy out there. So we aren't in a crisis because we have the energy we need. There's millions of people who carry this energy. And so I don't think that we're in need of more energy. We just need to direct that flow to recognizing each other as the answer. So I look at everybody here as a solution. And I remind people that you are the solution. You are the solution. It's okay to be angry, just don't hurt anybody. It's okay to be angry. Don't hurt anybody with your anger. That's basically what I was saying to people, and you're okay. Don't feel bad because you're mad. It's okay to be mad. We have a system here that makes us feel bad when we're mad. It makes us feel bad about ourselves, and we shouldn't feel bad. We should be angry. We should be angry. We should be out on the streets saying, "Stop! What's happening? Stop this!" Every police officer, you stood by and watched somebody kill somebody. Well, that's breaking the law. In the system we belong, if you watch someone kill someone, you're complicit. I don't know how many millions of people, probably a million, are sitting in jail right now because they were in a situation where somebody ended up dying and it wasn't their decision. They didn't play a part in it, but they were there with a group of people who were there when the death happened, and they're in jail now. So all of these officers, they need to be put in jail. The system that we're in right now, the system needs to stand back and let the people talk. The police departments needs to stand down and, as a matter of fact, open up and pave the way so people can get to these places, to like the Capitol building, and say what they have to say. Let our energy flow, let our words flow all the way to where they need to be, rather than shooting us, tear gassing us, and trying to quiet us. Because, well, my goodness, there's so much energy out there. Energy for a new way to live. We're all human. So yeah, we should be out in the streets. And I want to thank our young leader out there for being in the streets right now. So my prayers are for her out in the streets and everybody in the streets. But that's what I went to Standing Rock for. I was just holding space there for justice to appear and keeping peace in the community by letting people use their energy, express themselves. It's okay to be upset. It's okay to be angry. We need to focus all of that energy towards a result, towards a goal. And that goal is, of course, equality. It's to end police brutality. So if you have any privilege, go down to your police station with a sign and say, what's your plan to stop this brutality? Because it's our responsibility, all mothers' responsibility, all communities. So yeah, I want people to go to the police station. I want them to go to the Capitol. I want them to be able to use their freedom of speech to say, stop this brutality. It's time now, because we have the energy. We have the people now. And change doesn't come easy. It doesn't come easy, but we can make it easier by following certain steps, by choosing which side you're going to be on, the side of humanity or the side of a system so outdated, system that doesn't work, system that is dying and killing people. I don't want to be part of that system. So I just, I want to be that blessing. I want to give you the energy for me. I'm going to share it. I want to be like a current. Joe is a bridge. She connects people from here to there, and there's a little current that goes in between like this from here to here. I want to be like connector. Let's all connect. Let's use our energy. That's how powerful we are. We're so powerful. We don't know it yet.
Thank you, Cheryl, so much for that. And I want to invite Claire to introduce herself. She's someone that I know and that I actually personally have learned so much because she is an educator around equity, diversity, and inclusion. And I have seen her planting some incredible seeds in people's minds and hearts. And I know this conversation sometimes is not very pleasant for some people that feel that we're being very emotional and why are we protesting and destroying the economy and other things. So I want us to tell us a little about who you are, how did you got to this work, and what are some of your current reflections about what's happening, nationally. And in our city, of course, locally.
Well, first of all, thank you, Cheryl, for that beautiful prayer that opened us up and acknowledged the land that we're on. I appreciate that so much. And Aura for the invitation as well for this conversation. I think most relevant to this conversation in terms of my journey and my path, I would say about, gosh, it's almost 20 years ago now that I really, for the first time, and I won't say how old I am, but I was definitely an adult, I realized that I was white, and I came to really see that. And since that time, I've been committed to investigating the way that I am culturally shaped by a culture and society that is racist and that is white supremacist in its underpinnings and in its history. And I think one of the greatest privileges that white people have is the privilege to not think about race, and certainly not to think about our own racialized experience as white folks. So a big part of what I think white people are called to do right now is to self-interrogate, to become self-aware, to really self-examine and be able to identify our cultural and social conditioning. All of us are socially conditioned. As women, we are conditioned within a gender identity, right? All of us are socially conditioned to experience the world in terms of these macro factors: racism, white supremacy, sexism, homophobia, transphobia. So we all have a relationship to that. And Cheryl was talking about a new way of being in relationship. It's a relational way of being. White folks aren't asked to think about their relationship to their racial identity. They're not asked to think about how we benefit from racist systems. So I think that everybody has a role right now. Everybody has a role. Everybody has a role in confronting anti-Blackness, in confronting white supremacy, in abolishing systems that perpetuate oppression. Every single one of us has a role. And I would argue that white folks, as beneficiaries largely of those systems, have a very specific role to play. And it starts within us. It starts within that self-examination and really dislodging our social conditioning. And I wanted to speak briefly about how to do that practically, especially for folks who maybe are showing up to this awareness within themselves for the first time. or are for the first time really challenging themselves to get involved and to take action and don't know how, or are just stepping out onto the journey for the first time. And as you noted, Aura, this is an uncomfortable process. Mm-hmm. It is, by definition, uncomfortable. And I think rule number one is embrace discomfort and expect to be uncomfortable, but realize that the work of liberation, and especially supporting Black liberation and Black healing in the ways that we can as allies, is liberation for all of us. It's true freedom. So it's worth it. That discomfort is a sign that we're getting free. And so I want to talk a little bit about how do we identify signposts on the road, and specifically, how do we identify our blind spots? You know, if our privilege is that we don't have to see ourselves as white or think about how we benefit from white privilege, then how do we overcome those blind spots? Blind spots, by definition, mean we can't see them. So we have to find some other tools or some other signposts along the way that tell us, oh, I'm experiencing a blind spot. Let me get curious. Let me investigate. Let me dig deeper. So one of those first telltale signs that you're experiencing a blind spot is defensiveness. And this comes up a lot, the urge to defend yourself or to protect yourself. The question that I invite folks to consider is, from what? From what within yourself are you trying to distance or defend yourself? Get inside of that and get underneath that feeling of defensiveness and just accept humbly that maybe it's just a sign that you're encountering a blind spot. And what an opportunity to learn about yourself. What an opportunity to get free by digging in and seeing that blind spot for what it is and figuring out where it comes from. There's a couple other signs that you can look for. Frustration, you know, and you spoke about people having reactions to the protests. Well, I like this part of it, but I don't like that part. I'm really frustrated with the tactics that people are using. Or paralysis. I just don't know what to do. I just don't know what to say.
I don't know how to protest. A lot of people say also sometimes we shouldn't protest. It's destroying, our city, for example.
Exactly. So that frustration, that paralysis, also, I would argue, are signs that you're experiencing a blind spot. There's something you don't know about what's going on. There's something you don't understand about what's happening. So the opportunity here is to listen and learn and to be humble and soften into the fact that you might not have the answers. You know, white people love to have answers. White people love to have answers for everything. It's a part of the culture, if you think about it. Perfectionism, black and white, right and wrong, good versus evil, that binary thinking, I think, is a part of a white supremacist culture. So humble yourself and just listen and learn. If you're experiencing a blind spot, it's an opportunity to grow into your practice of becoming an ally. And lastly, I would just say very concretely what that looks like and means is to listen and learn, especially from leaders of color, especially from Black leaders, especially from Black-led movement organizations who have been laying the groundwork for a very long time, organizing their own communities. They have an agenda and they have demands. Specifically here in Los Angeles, there's a call to action around defunding the police. Mm-hmm. What that means is reallocating resources. LAPD's budget is $3 billion, billion with a B. We can reallocate those resources into community supporting services that create real safety and real protection and real health for communities. So defunding the police, prosecuting police officers that murder Black people and people of color, saying the name of the people who have been murdered, like George Floyd, like Breonna Taylor, like Ahmaud Arbery. When we say their name, we are remembering their humanity. That's an action too. That's a concrete action. So all we have to do is listen and humble ourselves and realize that something has been lodged deep inside of us, and it is our work at a spiritual level, at a political level, at a psychological level to unlearn and to rewire ourselves so that we can all get free together.
Thank you so much for that. I really, really appreciate your words and grounding us to this work that sometimes is very uncomfortable. and just giving us a little bit to think about. Because even myself, as a woman of color, as a Afro-Latina from Colombia, that I was born and raised there is tons of racism in Latin America. There is tons of racism around Black people too, and discrimination and classism. So I really hope that, as we often think that this nation leads the world, that we can also lead other people in their own liberation to think about other humans as what they are. Humans, beings, that I deeply believe that we are all interconnected. And I invited Jo Little to join us today because she does incredible work healing other people with mind, body, spirit practices around food and the relationship to the earth. And she's someone that I have spent some really good conversations and time to try to figure out how to best we show up as allies at this time where it feels painful. But I want to remind people that we're in so much turmoil and pain because there is so much going on. I mean, let's not forget we're in the middle of a pandemic that has affected our economy to put us in a recession, where there are millions of Americans that are out of work, that don't have, to pay their rent, that don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And we're in a society when we struggle with uncertainty. We have lost our faith. So Jo, I want us to introduce yourself, to tell us a little bit about your practice, the beautiful place that you have, the Lear, and beyond that, and to talk about just what are your reflections around this moment as well.
Thank you, Aura. Thank you so much for having me here and creating this opportunity for us to listen and to ask questions and to hear one another. I feel very wonderful to be here alongside these women, and I hope that we can be joined and be guided also by Thawindi. And so, like, my work has been a lot around cleansing, a lot about releasing, and it's a lot to do with working on the nervous system. And I've been very interested in the nervous systems of the body since having a serious injury to my own nervous system 8 years ago, which I worked for 6 years to recover from. And, you know, when I think of all the trauma that we go through as humans on a daily basis, and all the traumas that we have gone through generationally, historically, our ancestors, and how we have had, you know, trauma upon trauma.
Okay, I think we have Jo.
In my own life is getting people, if you imagine as there are drops dripping, the cup starts to get full, and at some point the cup will overflow if you don't keep emptying it out. And so I've been working with a lot of people to help them work with their nervous systems, whether that be through meditation, whether that be through food, but most of it is coming back into our own grounded presence. Being aware of what's going on in ourselves and how we can self-regulate, and also how we can join together and be with other people to help regulate, like, society. And that really comes from supporting one another and showing up for one another in a way of being like a support structure. So when you see somebody that needs something, you go to them and you support them. And that should be happening, like Cheryl was talking earlier about when a child screams out for a mother, we run to them. All women have that urge inside them to care for one another, to care for each other. And what I really see now is people coming together and wanting to heal this collective wound. Each of our ancestry, most of us, whether we are white, whether we are Indigenous, whether we are Afro-Latino, whether we are Black, have been through in our history some kind of trauma. So whether it is in our system, we need to come together and support the people that are going through the current trauma, because what's been going on in the last, like 400 or 500 years in this country is totally unacceptable. Mm-hmm. And so if we can stand with the people that are actually going through that and ask them how we can support them and create opportunities and use our privilege to illuminate and to encourage them to be in their best place, I feel that is our role. Mm-hmm. And it's really so super important for us to make sure that we put ourselves in a place of listening, and that we can come to their support, and that it's not something, like I've been working with Indigenous communities over the last few years, and when you go into a community, you don't tell them what they need, you ask them what they need.
Thank you.
Previously, before I started my work in cleansing, I was working with actually with the African Union and the United Nations doing concerts. I was a production manager, and I did a lot of, I worked for Al Gore's Live Earth, and I worked with Oxfam, and we were working a lot in Africa. And it was a lot of the problems that the NGOs were having is if they went in and tried to come up with solutions that they then tried to impose on those environments. So it's like, how do we come in and really be in a supportive role where we can illuminate their path and help them to guide us, and we act in a more of a supportive role?
That's beautiful. Thank you, Joe. I feel like now I got to know you a little better, and I am so grateful that you said that you don't just show up to tell people what to do, because I can tell you, as a Latina, as an Afro-Latina, as an environmental justice organizer, there's so many people that come to me to tell me, the Democrats are doing this and you're not doing that, and what you should be doing is Y and Z. And I want to just kindly tell people, please, use your voice. You have your own voice too. So instead of turning around, and I have told this story before, my first ever action around this world of activism was when I saw a science show about the ozone layer, and I learned about global warming, climate change. I went to talk to my principal, and I asked her what she was doing about climate change, and she turned it around and she said, well, what are you going to do about it? So I want to pose that question to folks too, because I think it's the time for everybody to use their voice and to stop telling other people, especially people of color, what to do, but to also use your voice and say, I'm here to help. How can I help you? So on that note, I want to bring a question from the audience here, from Laura Sanders. She's in YouTube, and she's asking, how should allies address other white people on social media who are aggressive and unable to emphasize with Black experience? Is it worth the time and energy to engage with them? What to do? So I think this is such a good question. So please, I want to open the floor for all of us that are having this candid discussion about, what do we do with other people on social media who are aggressive and unable to empathize, especially now when you see looting and everybody's like, oh, it's about vandalism. So who would like to take on, I don't know, maybe Claire, you want to start maybe answering a little bit, framing us on this question?
I could kick it off, especially since Laura is my mom. Hi, Mom. Good question. I think it is worth it. And what I see and what I've heard is people of color and Black people in particular saying, I'm exhausted. And specifically, I'm tired of the emotional labor involved in educating white people. So I think that's another important takeaway is, you know, for folks who are like, I want to learn more, explain racism to me. Do not go to your friends of color and your Black friends and say, hey, tell me what to do. You know, it's good to say, what do you need and how can I support you? But don't put that burden of labor on people of color to educate you. There's plenty of resources already out there. And so it's our work to educate ourselves and to take that work on ourselves. But in terms of social media engagement, it's tough because it's a limited forum, and it's, I think, a forum that already disincentivizes empathy. It's hard to have real relational conversations where we have sort of a transformational experience together. But that said, as a white person, I would rather take that on so that my Black friends or partner doesn't have to. And so I think freeing them of that burden to have to engage with everybody, and especially if it's a white person engaging with another white person, I think that's really appropriate. That is a part of what we can do to be an ally, is to take on the work of educating, informing, and organizing other white folks. You know, some people have this term like, come get your cousin, you know, this idea of like, you need to come and get your cousin Karen already. I'm tired. Karen, sit down. Backyard Beck or Barbecue Becky, where is your white cousin who's going to come and educate you so that people of color don't have to do it? So I think it is worth it to the degree that we can. And I do see some of my white friends saying like, hey, tag me on posts where I can be of service and just jump in and provide links and provide resources and try to steer the conversation in another way. And social media is public discourse. So this is our public conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Did anybody wants to chime in? I totally agree with that, but I'm curious about what you ladies, Joe or Cheryl, want to add to this question about just talking to people on social media when sometimes they can. I mean, I sadly, as we saw on Saturday when the protest started, I saw the violence, you know, show up. And people tagging and graffitis, and there were buses and police cars burned down, and people messaging me saying, "You see, you participate on that too," and it's hard to hear because I think people are missing the bigger point here, which is that for so long we wrote letters, we sang, we made phone calls, we did Twitter chats and storms. And we went to talk to our elected officials and asked them to listen to us. And more people keep dying, especially Black people keep dying at the hands of the police. And we continue seeing not just a police system, but a systemic, like an economic system that is unequal and that is racist. So let's not lose sight of that, you all. Just stay with me on this point, because you're missing the bigger challenge here, which is we have not been addressing the injustice, and enough is enough. And sometimes it takes hard measures, sadly, and sometimes nobody really wins. So I don't know if Cheryl or Joe, you guys want to add anything to this question about dealing with allies that are not sympathetic to the cause?
I'll step in here now. What I was going to say is that when I speak with people who are listening and watching and waiting for things that they don't like about the movement, and then those are the points that they only want to talk about those points. Like they want to talk about the looting. But the truth is, since 1492, the looters are now the richest people in America. You know, how did that happen? Now the looters hired their own police force. And now if you break a window, if you own a business or if you're entitled, you have a police force who will protect you. But if you don't have that privilege, then you have a police force that kills you. But what I want to say is that when I'm talking to people, if they're not listening to what I'm saying, then I usually say, can we agree that killing an unarmed person is wrong? Can we agree on that? Because that's what we're talking about. Everything else that's happening is reactionary and temporary. But the demands of the people are real. The pain that they're feeling is real. So I like to go back to the origins of the story and tell the story. And the story is about a man whose life was taken unjustly, mercilessly. And ask whoever's wants to talk about the looting, what's more important here? You know, a system that can kill people without being held accountable, or broken windows that your insurance will pay for. Because it's the story. Ask them to watch the story. And there's a lot of documentaries that if they want to be shown what it feels like and what it looks like, you can say, watch this video and then tell me what you think about it, or this documentary, and then come back and tell me what you feel about it. But don't stop the conversation. Challenge them to be better human beings, and ask them, would you like to be on your knees with your hands up, or your hands in handcuffs? Would you like to be killed or see your daughter or your son be killed? Honestly, would you? Because then it puts the story right in their own house, right in their own family. So those questions are really important. And I mean, there's a lot of documentaries. I got a list of them here that I stole from Teen Vogue. But it says it's like there are documentaries are them. One of them is called "Do Not Resist." The other one is called "The Tall Man." One is called 3.5 Minutes, 10 Bullets. There's a documentary called The House I Live In.
I've heard
So
about.
there are videos out there already telling stories, true stories. So whoever your ally is that you're speaking with, tell them that that a choice has to be made. They can't sit on the fence anymore. Do you want to be part of the solution, or do you want to continue being a part of the problem? Because silence is complicity. You know, but if you're having a real conversation with a friend or an ally, then tell them that you need them. I mean, literally say, "I need you." You know, not just me, but our future needs you. Can we depend upon you to stand beside us, to let go of that fear? Because the bottom line here in America, everything that's happening is based on fear. People are afraid of Black people. People are afraid of losing what they've looted. And I mean, to me, it sounds hilarious but they are. They've gained riches, um, and now there are people who are asking them to share those riches, um, and they're asking them to care for their communities, to change the way that they look at money, to stop the killing for money, because ultimately some of the killing that's happening has to do with environment. Yeah, have to do with that. Yeah. So, but there are documentaries that you can watch, and one of the things I like that Claire said was listen. Listen, and I'm glad everybody here is listening right now. And I am really thankful for having this, being part of this chat, this fire chat. But yeah, I don't want people to be tossed to the side just because they're at the moment they're not listening. But keep on invite them, and make that connection, and say, let's stay connected because we need you. We need you. And it's I don't know. It's a difficult discussion, and luckily, my allies are my allies, and I'm really thankful that I have people who listen, and who aren't afraid anymore. But removing that fear allows change. It literally opens up a whole new path if you let go of the fear.
new friends. I want to go because I know that we are one of those folks. Well, I feel like the four of us cross pollinate, meaning we have worlds and we go to other worlds, and we're kind of like very working queen bees here, very matriarchs in this group. And you have a lot of friends that sometimes are not. Some of those friends, and those of them are my friends too, that say, well, I have Black friends, I'm down, I understand. I dated a Black woman, or so. What is your take when you see somebody, or whether it's in social media or around the dining table or in your garden or in your class? You do master cleanse, mind, body, spirit, fasting for thousands of people. So how do you navigate this with those folks when they say, when they're like, well, they're not able to kind of get on the same page? How do you help them process that?
Well, for me, especially in social media, like I'm not really somebody who opens like large dialogues backwards and forwards on comments. If I see somebody, and I have done it many times where I've seen somebody that I know making a comment that confuses me, I'll actually call them directly or message them. Because I think that sometimes, like, especially on the messages and on the communication, like people can send something very quickly when they're in a car or when they're like, distracted doing something else. And I don't want to go into like a tit for tat. I don't want to go backwards and forwards with that person. I want to know, and I want to hear them, and I want them to feel like heard, and then not like pushed back against. So I don't want it to, sometimes it can escalate and it can end up being becoming an argument when you don't actually invite the person's full expression to be heard. And then from the place of listening to them and hearing them, I can enter into like deeper conversation with them around like their viewpoint. I mean, protests can look so many different ways. One of the protests that I put out there time and time again is actually Cheryl's protest. And I've put it out there and I've seen grown men cry. And if those of you who haven't seen Cheryl's silent march to the bridge, you should check it out. I don't know, maybe Aura can put it on the chat or something.
And this is when is on Standing Rock.
Exactly. And realizing like what comes when you take a stand for something. And I always try and draw people into curiosity and ask them, like, what would they do, like, in this situation? And then they say, well, I would do this. Okay. And then if you're not heard, then what would you do? And then if you keep pushing them and you keep asking, okay, and then you're still not heard. So then what would you do? And if you keep pushing people sometimes can get frustrated by the questioning. And I'm like, hey, I'm just questioning you. And you're getting frustrated even by the question, and you're not even living the experience. So how do you think it feels to embody the situation? All I'm doing is provoking, like asking like provocative questions, and you're already getting upset with me. So how do you think it feels when people are pushed to their absolute limits, like physically, emotionally, mentally, see people that they know being taken down? So like I try to draw people in by helping them to feel safe and supported by me. And then I like to open it up and give them ways to see things. Because if you ask somebody to be affected and you ask somebody to become sensitive to something, Generally, if they have a viewpoint, they're just standing that argument and then trying to ram that argument in. And like there's a saying which is called in body work called the point of balance tension. And it's actually where you apply the same amount of pressure, and then that pressure has to keep pushing back at you, and it creates extra tension. Whereas if you stand back and you allow them to come to you, they can fall into your arms, you can hold them, and then you can support them and you can guide them through it. And I'm, you know, in my younger years, I was definitely more on the argumentative side of things. I wanted to be heard. And now I feel much more like it's much better to be interested than interesting. Like listen to people, like give people, whether even that person is saying something you agree with or you're even shocked by, if you give them the space to be heard, then you can enter into a much better dialogue with them.
Thank you so much for that. That was beautiful. So I'm getting a lot of questions, so maybe we can just go quickly through them. But somebody asking is a very long question, but but basically is she's struggling with finding her voice. She's a white young woman. She's an organizer, and she actually teaches about power and privilege. So we all struggling. We all on this together. I think we can all agree how the system of power works. I know that it's helpful for folks to learn about how they can influence our system of power, where oppression and prejudice and harm is pervasive. But I'm unsure if it's appropriate for me to be teaching right now, I guess because she's a white woman, or to exclusively be uplifting voices of color. So people who are also leaders in political organization space. So what is your take when we have an educator here that is a white woman? Claire, I think it's completely appropriate for you to chime in here. What happens when, is it okay right now to be spreading the word when you're not a person of color or a Black person?
It's a great question, because I think it shows that introspection about when and where is my voice needed? When is it appropriate to be quiet and listen? And when is it appropriate to speak? And I think it's all about the context. And my invitation to this person would be, why not channel your expertise and the analysis that you now have inside you and the organizing skills you have to mobilizing other white people to take action for racial justice. That's, in my book, a very appropriate role, because that's work that Black people, people of color, have been carrying the burden of for so long. So I think for white folks to focus their efforts on anti-racism work with other white people is a tremendous contribution. And I would just say there's many organizations and places to get plugged in around this. A national organization is Showing Up for Racial Justice, SURGE. Locally in Los Angeles, there's Aware LA, awarela.org. Lots of activity happening, White People for Black Lives. Yeah. So there's organizations that, I would invite this person, I'm sure they're already involved, but to share their talents in that way. And I think that's a beautiful way to lift your voice and make room at the same time for amplifying voices of color.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much. I don't know if anybody else wants to take a crack at this question. Is it appropriate? What do you do when you're a white person and you know already about privilege and white supremacy too? Like, is it appropriate in this moment to speak and to evangelize, I guess, others on this work?
Well, I guess I would say that I was also nervous myself about speaking today. Like, Aura invited me, well, she spoke to me first, and I invited Cheryl, and then afterwards she invited me, and my first reaction was, I don't think so. I like, what do I have to bring to the table? And then she encouraged me that we have to participate. And if we don't participate, then we're not using our voice. So here I am, is all I have to say on that.
Oh, thank you. Well, because also, we all have our networks, and I actually know personally Jess, and she's been trying to do such an amazing work. I do think that speaking and sharing your own experience as a white person with your maybe white peers or others is good, but also pair that with the work of other people of color that are, really speaking out about this issue and that are participating and that are having the experience. So just like Joe invited Cheryl, I invited Tandewi, even though she's at the protest right now, and I hope everything is well for her and for everyone that went to Jackie Lacey's, who is the district attorney of Los Angeles, who has over 600 cases of Black lives death and died and under her watch, and nobody has ever been prosecuted. So I think at this point it really calls for action and to ask her to step up and to make sure that nobody that people are being accountable, and that it can continue this way. We need to change. And I wanted to invite Tandiwi because as someone that started the Black Lives Matter youth movement here in Los Angeles and is the daughter of one of the main organizers of Black Lives Matters here in Los Angeles, I thought it was important to uplift her voice, even though she's 15 years old, because who better to tell us what's going on around and what she's been through, even at her young age. So I think for all of you that are listening out there, I think it's extremely important that you uplift the work of other people, that you support their work, because ultimately we're the ones that are in the everyday front line. Not just in the protest on Saturday or the one yesterday or the one before yesterday, in everyday front line. So it's important to uplift their voices. Any other thoughts, Cheryl, around this?
Well, the history of white women in America, of course, because there's always, this balance and this imbalance. White women historically have normalized racism and white supremacy, and it's time for white women in America to become uncomfortable with their history and their ancestral roles, because if the white women here in America stood up and said no more killing on this land, because this land was a gift to us, and we came here and we were accepted and we were welcomed and we were fed and we were clothed and we were taught and we were embraced, and all we were asked to do was to live in peace with the land and the people, then that means that we cannot allow our sons and our daughters to rape the people, kill the people, and rape and kill the land. But that's the history of America. And so I see the energy of white women as a contributing factor in their silence and in their normalcy of what was happening around them. And so it's not only just built on money and the looting of all the resources, but the women who stood beside those men didn't stop them. And they raised children to do the same thing over and over without remembering that agreement that was made a long time ago to protect the earth and to live in peace with the people. So there's a lot of conversations that should be going on in the tables, in the dining rooms across America, when women sit down at that table, they should recognize that they have power because they're teachers. They are the teachers. When their husband goes to work, and when they come home, um, whenever they're left to teach the children, they can teach them how to live in harmony. They can teach them that racism is not acceptable, and that I'm going to use a term here that we haven't said tonight, but it's really important. That term is called ancestral healing. This entire country was founded in bloodshed, and the trauma wasn't just one-sided. My people may have bled, the people of color, blood is all over this land. But so were the people who fought for this land. And their ancestors carry that burden, just like I carry the burden of knowing my ancestors were murdered. They carry the knowledge that their ancestors are murderers and thieves. And people don't want to look at themselves that way. It hurts. Nobody wants to say, oh, my grandpa killed your grandpa. It's hard. It's really hard to think like that because they built this country for them to rule over it and for life to be convenient. And they don't want to look at people like me or Black people and say, I'm sorry that you're having a hard time, that we created a system just for us. But that's what they should be saying. They should be saying and recognizing that this system was built for them. It wasn't built for us. It wasn't built to be peaceful with the land, and to live in peace with the people that were here, the people of color. But ancestral healing is a huge step, and it's about the bloodshed that occurred all across this landscape. And I have forgiven and will continue to forgive people who come up to me and say, I understand that you suffer trauma, and I understand that I carry, that mark on my family, and I want that mark to go away. I want to be cleansed of that history. I want peace between our bloodlines, because there are people who are having nightmares now of them. They wake up and they say, I had a dream that I was being murdered and I was riding a horse and the army was chasing me. Well, that's because your ancestor was on that horse chasing you. I mean, that was because you're feeling the pain that you have ignored, that has been ignored on this landscape. It's like the blood in the land is rising up to talk to the people. And it's time to heal. It's time to heal because it's been ignored for so long. And we can't just keep killing people anymore because we think we're right. Because we're not right. Killing is not right. It never has been right. So ancestral healing is part of the answer. Yes, let's defund the police. Let's defund the police. Yes, let's pull back the military. Let's let the people express their anger, because it's okay to be angry, frustrated. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But it is wrong when you hurt other people. And that's the whole point of this conversation, is it's wrong to hurt other people. It is. We can't go out and kill people just because we've been killed. We have to heal from that. And we have to have our stories heard. And accountability has to happen. Justice has to prevail. And we have the energy to do that. We have the intelligence to do that. But the people have to listen. The people who sit in those police departments and the politicians, they have to listen. That's what time it is. That's why people are in the street, because they've stopped listening and they only want to talk about the looting. They don't want to talk about the problem, the cause of people. So that's why I think stories are really important. Stories Stories tell the truth. And I want to heal. I want the whole country to heal. And I want this place to be a place where I don't have to be afraid, where my people of color don't have to be afraid to be killed in the street, because that's what's happening right now. It's time to stop that. And I don't know. I don't know the future, but I do know people can change. I do know people can change, and that's what my hope is, that that they come to an understanding that I am part of the problem and I should be part of the solution. And my message to white women out there is, racism is taught. Don't let your children be taught to be racists. Don't let them be racists. Heal the trauma in your history. Look back to say, what did my family contribute to this country? And heal and say you're sorry when you need to. And forge an alliance, with the people who lived on the land that you're living on right now. A lot of Americans don't even know they're living on ancestral lands, and the people there were forced to move out, and that they want to come back and sing their songs. Let them come back, provide a space for them to come back, talk about it, because there's room for everyone. This land is beautiful, and there's room for everyone, but that there's not room for everybody fighting. There's room for everybody to live in peace. The land wants peace, and there's room for that peace. So I hope, and I'm happy to be here, but I always hope that people just listen to each other and care about each other.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. I know that there are some folks asking, more information about how can they plug in now and continue doing this work. I also know that this is not going to be resolved in 1 hour conversation with all of us, but I know that all of us in our own capacity offer some way or another a space to, in my case, organize and, uplift the struggle that we need to vote. If you're asking your Black friends, what can you do? The first thing you need to do is adopt 5 friends and have them vote. And if you can vote, that's okay, because you can still encourage other people to vote. Please do me a favor. I don't want to hear it anymore. I want everyone to vote. That's extremely important. Right now in Los Angeles, we have a budget, and 54% of our budget is going to the police, where we need parks, where we need sidewalks being fixed, where we need more trees. We need better public transit. We need investments in communities that really need it. Friends, we need to participate. We need to get involved. So my call to you is, if you don't know how, you can reach out to me. We are ready to help. We have a mutual aid community network where we organize, and it's wonderful. And you need to get to vote. You need to call your representatives and ask them to pass a budget that reflects our needs and our wants. $3 billion, where we have 47,000 people sleeping in our streets every night. Sit with that. No, we can't. So if you are outraged about the looting, go ahead and do me a favor and call your representative, call Mayor Garcetti, call Nure Martinez, the president of the City Council in Los Angeles. If you don't live in Los Angeles, go call your own people, call your DA. Tell them to prosecute cops that are killing people. That can be you. That can be me. So that's my call to action to you. I want to open the space. I know Claire has a training coming. I know Joe has a cleanse coming if you are more inclined on the mind, body, spirit work. I know Cheryl, people are asking me how they can get a hold of you. People are excited. So Claire, can you share a little bit about what's coming for you and how people can plug in to learn more about their own privilege and white supremacy?
So there's a couple trainings coming up I want to let folks know about. One, unfortunately, is not open, but I just want to put it on people's radar because it happens every year, and it's called the Unmasking Whiteness Institute, and it's a 4-day training to do a deep dive on everything from the history of white supremacy in this nation to white racial identity development and the phases that we go through as white people when we wake up to see the truth of racism. But related to that, so look that up, and it's offered by Aware LA, which I mentioned, which is a local organization that hosts monthly dialogues to build our anti-racism practice, to build a culture of anti-racism among white folks. Also, a very dear friend who is involved in both Aware and the Unmasking Whiteness Institute wrote a book called Witnessing Whiteness. Her name is Shelley Touchluck. She's actually a professor here in LA. The book is Witnessing Whiteness, and if you go to witnessingwhiteness.com, there's a host of resources. This is perfect for grandmas, aunties, uncles who are not trying to have the conversation. You want to engage them on step one, go to Witnessing Whiteness. This is the beginning. There's a book, and then she also has a 10-week workshop series coming up. It's free. And it's very much, let's just start this journey. And by the way, committing to anti-racism is a lifelong journey. So We're always learning, we're always unlearning, and we're always, just deepening in this path. It's not a workshop, it's not a training, it's a commitment to a lifelong path. So I hope that those resources can be helpful to folks. And if people want to reach out directly to me, I'm always here to support as well. So you can find me on Facebook, Claire Fox.
Thank you, Claire. And I posted all of those resources on the chat so that people can see it on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter. So you all got it. Joe, you have something very beautiful coming up next week where we can all participate. Tell us.
Yes, I'm going to be offering another cleanse online. I did 9 cleanses over the lockdown period, and then we took a break for a couple of weeks, and we're going to be starting back up again next week. It's a 24-hour fast, and the idea is like one body, one planet, understanding that we really just have this vessel to look after for this lifetime, and we have this home, which is our earth, and the two are so interconnected, and it's the understanding around microcosm, macrocosm. We're going to be actually working with a gentleman from Mexico who does a lot of vision quests, and we'll be speaking a little bit about spiritual fasting. I did a one with Cheryl about a month ago, which was incredible. And we were talking about the energy of the elements and the water. And so a lot of the work that I do goes back to supporting Indigenous communities around the world. We've been supporting we had a month where we were working with Cheryl, and then also with the Mayans down in Mexico. And we are supporting the Ashaninka down in Brazil, and just really making sure that any ways that we can help and support those communities that we can, and by looking after our bodies, that we are looking after the earth. So I have an Instagram and a Facebook, which is both creative cleansing, and you can find some more information on my website about that also.
It's creativecleansing.com, correct?
.com, exactly.
Okay, Creative Cleansing. I'm putting it here on the chat so everybody can go and check it out. Cheryl, how can we learn more about your practice, your philosophy, your nonviolent communication work? How can people maybe get in touch with you, or just learn more about your wisdom and your teachings?
First of all, my name is Cheryl Angel. I am a member of the Sichahu Lakota tribe in Rosebud, South Dakota. And I found myself in a really on the front line, Standing Rock, in a really violent place. And I learned that had it not been for my experience as a sun dancer, of being able to hold your peace and to discipline your body and your mind as one object, one sacred object. If I hadn't learned that, I would have never have been able to hold the peace on the front line, and I would have never had to rid myself of all the fears and the worries of pain. So there wasn't any fear. I I released the fear from me, so I was able to go to the front line and hold that space. And so that's what I was doing there, was bringing my ceremony to the front line and holding that space in peace for all of the people who were there on the front line. And thankfully, during all of my actions on the front line, there was not one arrest or one case of brutality, because we were able to do it in a very powerful, profound, spiritual way that I literally told the police officers, I'm here and we're here and we're including you in this ceremony. And these are the ceremony protocols. So it was a different space that police officers probably had never been into. And it provided safety for us. It allowed us to have our ceremonies and pray and show people that you can hold a really violent space peacefully and in prayer and in ceremony. So I have a page called Sacred Activism, and it's when you have the spiritual side of protests and you have the civil disobedience side of protests, and you put them together.
Beautiful.
It's called Sacred Activism. What did you say?
Is this on Facebook?
Yes. And I founded a group of women called Sovereign Sisters, and this is based around transferring the wisdom of our economies from like grandmother to granddaughter, transfer those teachings, but also share those teachings horizontally across women who want to be sovereign and who want to be disconnected from the system. And what we're trying to do is to create a community of these sovereign economies by building homes, teaching women how to build their own home around their economy so that their children can be safe and it'll be nonviolent and drug and alcohol free, because we are surrounded in our tiny communities by violence and addictions. And the women who are holding their families together are doing it with this economy. And it's a tiny economy, but it's enough to fill in all the gaps so that they're able to feed their children and they're able to do the things that they need to do to keep that family together. So those are the people who we support. We're supporting a woman who is right now she is a beautiful woman. We went to visit her a couple of months ago in Mexico. She was a Nobel Peace Prize nominee in 2019 for the Huichol Center on behalf of the Erotica people. And we're helping her because she has an eco-village and she has a center for the elders who come, the spiritual people who come and make their pilgrimages. But we are just a small group of women, but we really help each other when the time comes. And I'm hosting a podcast or a live feed or a stream. I'm not sure what you call it because I know nothing about technology, but it'll be at the end of July. And it'll be broadcast from a core group. I think out of Taos, New Mexico, we'll do the live feed. But we do have a wonderful producer, and I'm sure people here who don't know her name should know her name. Her name is Lila June. She's a hip hop Native American artist, poet, activist, spiritual leader, all of those things. She's all of those things, and she's educated. I think she's working on her master's or her doctorate. She's actually on her doctorate level right now. So basically, I work with women.
You can find more, of your information. And on the Facebook page, you let us know on your Facebook page if of all these exciting events that you're partaking.
I have to apologize. I rarely ever get on Facebook. So someone else posts on Sacred Activism, but I talk with her daily, and so I have people. What I want to do is I want people to put their stuff on Sacred Activism. What are they doing? Put it on that page. Share with people. What do you need? Put it on that page. Just creating a space for people to put their stories on that page and their needs on that page for the actions that they're doing in their communities.
The virtual. Thank you so much. the three of you for joining me today and hosting and just holding space for us to have a conversation. I see a lot of comments and a lot of people like it's hard to bring all of the comments. We'll be here for a whole day. But I'm leaving very encouraged because we had a very candid conversation, and I think people are leaving maybe understanding a little better of their place, and maybe just knowing that they can count on us to share a little bit about how you can be a better ally or best ally that you can be to the Black community right now, especially in this time. I can tell you guys there is a lot of Black businesses that have been struggling with COVID-19. Go ahead and support them. Shop from their stores. Support Black-owned or businesses, and also support the work of all these amazing organizations that are doing grassroots work all around the country. Get involved. Vote. This is really comes down to this. So vote so that we can see the manifestation of what we are changing within us. It can be seen everywhere else. So I just want to say to everyone that listened today, I love you. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you for also partaking in this journey with me. And I'm grateful for the three of you and for all the women that are holding it down out there, and for all the people that are protesting right now, wherever they are. Thank you so much for exercising that right that we all have and sometimes we take for granted. So have a great night, everyone. And we will be speaking very soon. I'll see people in cleanses. I'll see people in classes. I'll see people on Instagram. Please join us. And of course, for more information, you can always go and visit my social media or my website. And it's outa2020.com/get involved. Join me. There is so much work that we still need to do. And that is decolonizing our mind is a long journey, and you're not alone. So thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll speak very soon. Bye-bye.